season at 7 o'clock. Lead college football writer over at Sports Illustrated is Andy Staples. He'll be in Baton Rouge in the stadium for the matchup. But first, probably will be at Ruffino's for a table full of meat on Friday night. Is that right, sir?
Ruffin's going to have to find a way to get into the black without me, unfortunately.
Wow.
I'm a late add to this game because I was going to be somewhere else and the story fell through. So I am going to be in New Orleans on Friday night just because I could not get a decently priced flight and or hotel into Baton Rouge.
Man,
I think they got some good restaurants in New Orleans, I've heard.
Yeah, that'll.
They have some okay places, but I'd rather be in Baton Rouge soaking it all in.
Absolutely. Andy Staples going to be here on Saturday night covering it for Sports Illustrated. When you talk about
sleep
stories,
in my bed, Andy.
When you talk about stories, what's the story of this game going into the matchup?
Alabama's really good, and this might be the only team in the regular season that could beat them. I mean, that's pretty much it. And we don't know if anybody can beat Alabama. We don't know if anybody can even come close. There was an interesting graphic on the Feinbaum show yesterday. They showed the yards per play allowed by all the defenses Alabama has played. And I love yards per play allowed because it adjusts for tempo, and it's a much better stat than total defense. And the best defense that Alabama has played so far in yards per play allowed is number 90 in the country. So that really intrigues me because what that means is Alabama has not played even a decent defense yet, and now they're about to play a really good one. So, can they do what they've been doing to a good defense? And if they can, then I'm not sure there's any hope for anybody else.
Yeah.
But we haven't seen them play one yet. And maybe they will look a little more mortal when they're playing a good defense. And that's the part I'm pretty curious about. I mean, we've seen Tua and most of these guys play against a really good defense once before, and that was the second half of the national championship game, and they were pretty good. So my suspicion is they'll be just fine against a good defense, but we haven't seen it yet. And I think that's what's most intriguing about it.
Yeah, that's what everybody's kind of, I think, like around the country. Like you said, LSU does kind of represent this bastion of hope that maybe they can make them look more mortal. And I guess that's kind of where I'll go with this. And so you mentioned everybody's defensive efficiency rankings. LSU, just for reference, ranks 24th in that. So, yeah, you're looking at almost like 3 times better than any team that Alabama has faced this year. But when I watch Tua, Andy, and I watched a lot of film yesterday, which I hadn't done previously, and I'm just shocked at how easy he makes it look. And partially that's going against bad defenses, but against those bad defenses, he's been unbelievable. And it's almost like he makes it look so easy that you don't even realize, and you look up at the stat line, he's like 11 of 13, has 150 and 3 scores. Just hyper efficient, sees the entire field, makes good decisions. What do you think when he gets tested this Saturday? If you had to answer, do you think he looks a bit more mortal?
I don't know. I mean, because let's think back to that national championship game. He came in cold off the bench against one of the 3 best defenses in the country and made it look bad. Now, there were mistakes in that game. That's the one thing we have not seen from him this year is some crazy, what were you thinking? Remember, the play before the one that won the national title was a complete freshman, what the hell were you thinking play?
Yeah.
But he's had the entire preseason and the entire, 3/4 of the season to play with these guys, to get seasoning. I don't know that he makes those mistakes again, but if you can get some pressure on him, maybe, because he does seem like he would be willing to take some risks. But it's really I think a lot on Greedy Williams and Christian Fulton to try to get those guys one-on-one. So LSU, if they have a chance, can send an extra guy and try to get some pressure onto it, because I don't think you could just let him sit back there. Because if you do, he is just going to pick you. The way and T-Bob backed me up on this, he throws the ball different. There's something different about the ball because he can throw it 45 yards on a frozen rope, but when it lands in the guy's hand, it's like something falling onto a pillow.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. You're right. It's like it's a rocket arm that somehow has touch attached to the end.
It's so strange. So that's the part. I think we're dealing with something special. And another stat I like is yards per attempt for quarterbacks, because you can kind of tell how explosive they are, how efficient they are. Tua is averaging 13.7 yards an attempt. Like Baker Mayfield last year, having one of the greatest seasons a quarterback has ever had in college football, averaged 11.7.
Yeah, which I believe is the NCAA record, I want to say.
Cam had a really good average when he won the Heisman. I want to say that was in the maybe even in the 12s. Kyler Murray is in the 12s right now, too, for Oklahoma.
Wow.
That's the crazy thing. Like, most years, Kyler Murray would be walking away with the Heisman, but Tua is doing things we've never seen before.
Yeah, 10 yards, just for like those who don't know, 10 yards per attempt is elite. If you're hitting 10 every time you throw the ball, that's great.
8.5 is good.
Yeah.
8.5 is good. So,
yeah.
It's crazy.
So it's look, trying to stop Tua, that's what I think everybody's most excited to see on Saturday, especially because you do have a guy who hasn't thrown a pick going against secondary that has more picks than anybody in the nation. That's all well good. On the other side of the ball, if LSU is going to win this game, Tua's going to get his. How much we'll have to see, but LSU's going to have to be able to score. The thing that worries me most is LSU's offensive line against Alabama's defensive line. If you were Insminger, how do you think you would try to scheme up against this Alabama D-line, which led by guys like Isaiah Buggs, and we mentioned Quentin Williams this year, who has just been great at that nose position. What do you think about that matchup?
That's the one I'm worried about the most, too, because, I think back to that Florida game, and LSU had some trouble with their pass rushers. Now, I don't know that Alabama has the guy screaming off the edge, kind of like Ja'Kai Polite. They're more, they're a different kind of defense. They're an odd front that, Florida's an odd front now too with Grantham, but they're still more. They're going to get interior pressure with guys like Buggs, and that's a tough. It's a different animal to deal with because you might have to change the launch point, sprint Joe Burrow out, get him moving around a little bit so that he's not standing there as the pocket collapses on him. And the one thing I do think that LSU's done really well is Burrow's been kind of a willing runner, and they'll do some read option stuff, and he can take – because Alabama got burned by that last year against Auburn. Stidham hit him on some – that's a good rhyme. Stidham hit him. But hit him on some read option stuff that worked. And now part of that is because they had to respect what Kerryon Johnson could do. And it would be up to Nick Brossette or Clyde Edwards-Helaire to make them respect that. They have to respect those two before they can forget about the quarterback running the ball. So that's the piece of it that LSU's got to get some holes open for those guys. And I think back to that Florida game, like Brossette had that great drive where they gave it to him 3 times and he basically moved them down the field and he never got the ball again.
He vanished.
Yeah.
They didn't hand him the ball. They didn't even have him on the field the next drive. So, but that's the sort of thing that they've got to be able to do that every once in a while against Alabama, or there's no chance. Because once you're one-dimensional against them, you don't have a chance. Now, it is worth challenging their corners deep because those guys are really good, and if you make a mistake, their safeties are going to come clean it up. But if you get them in one-on-one matchups, you have a chance.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things that LSU has been pretty good. I look at the Georgia game, I look at the Auburn game. They've been able to hit some big plays down the sideline on a one-on-one matchup. If they can force some of those, Burrow's got the arm, LSU has the receivers, they should be able to get a couple chunk plays. I don't know if it's a bunch, but they should be able to get a few.
Yeah, and last year they were close some. By the way, so Baker Mayfield did set the record, 11.5 yards per attempt, and both Murray and Tua are on pace to break it this year.
Last one, Andy. We'll get you out of here so we can get you out on time. And Andy Staples of Sports Illustrated joining us, ESPN Radio in New Orleans and Baton Rouge. And your last Dear Andy write-up, I know you touched a little bit on the Devin White stuff and the LSU's Alabama conspiracy theories that have been rolling around Baton Rouge for the last 7-8 days. What's the impact of him not on the field for 30 minutes?
Well, I mean, it's a huge impact because he's the leader of that defense. He's the guy everybody's looking to. He's the great communicator on that defense. But the thing is, they have a veteran enough defense that I don't worry about them completely falling apart without him. If this was a younger group and he was the only big veteran leader, I might be a little more worried. But this is a group that's played a lot of football. I don't think it's going to be the end of the world that he's not playing, but it's going to be a hell of a lot nicer in the third quarter when he's back.
Ton of people right inside the huddle that you can stay in their guest house. if you want. I can send over some info.
Well, we got a new Sports Illustrated employee living in Baton Rouge, Ross Dellinger.
That's right.
If I need, I'll just crash on his couch.
Good area of town he's in. Thanks for the time this morning, man.